from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down the Broncos as they head into the final 5 games of the season. They got a game against Detroit. They got Cincinnati. Then they got 3 division games. But, Ben, I think one of the big things that everybody's talking about right now is what's going on with the offense. And so it kind of doesn't matter what happens in these final 5 games if you can't get those things kind of ironed out. And it starts with the quarterback, of course, with Teddy Bridgewater. He's got to play more consistent. We can talk a little bit about the receivers, but what I wanted to start with is something you said on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show, about the running back position, because Melvin Gordon is going to practice this week, and eventually he will come back. Now, there are some out there that are saying, hey, Javonte Williams has showed everybody that he should be getting more work in the offense, and the team just looks more electric with him out there. But it's not like they look bad with Melvin Gordon. So I thought this was a great point you brought up about why you don't immediately turn everything over to Javonte Williams. It's not because he isn't talented, not because he isn't very good. It's also more to do with the longevity of his career here in Denver.
Well, that's right. There are multiple reasons you want Melvin Gordon to be the guy this year. If you're a Broncos fan, you want Melvin Gordon to be the guy this year because Melvin's probably not going to be back with the Broncos after this. And, if Melvin Gordon has a good year and signs a big contract somewhere else, that helps the Broncos out in the compensatory formula, maybe gets you up to a third-round draft pick in the compensatory formula. But the other side of this is with Javonte. Javonte is a violent runner. He seeks out contact. And so, the last thing that you want to do is take tread off the tires in what is I don't want to call it a meaningless year, but the Broncos aren't real Super Bowl contenders this year, if we're being honest. They might make the playoffs.
How dare you?
They might make the playoffs. They might.
Yeah.
I don't think they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders. So, I think that, if you're looking at this objectively, I don't think you want to run the tread off the tire on your future star for probably the next 3 years. On a season that, frankly, doesn't mean that much. Do you want to get him injured? Do you want to get him hurt? Continue to bring him along. There are still some flaws in his game. The pass blocking pickups, they're mostly good, but there have been some oof moments. He still gets stuffed at way too high a rate on short yardage carries. Got to figure that out. And then, catching the ball out of the backfield. He's done fairly well with that. There have been some drops there that, you're kind of like, ugh. But, there's been some good. He just needs to clean that up and be a little bit more consistent. So continue to bring him along at the same rate. I hate it when people are, well, Melvin Gordon fumbles the ball. They have the same number of fumbles on the season, guys. So, I think at the end of the day, you just want to, you don't want to put him in bubble wrap, but you don't want to sit there and wear him out in a season where he's going to be the feature guy next year anyway.
And he definitely will be the feature guy next year. And maybe it's a mixture of Mike Boone, and maybe they draft another player. Who knows? But that's exactly where this thing is headed. But let's stay with the offense and go to the wide receivers, because you tweeted out earlier about how the receiving group only has 7 touchdowns this year.
Combined, yes.
Combined. And that's a staggering thing to say when you're looking at how the Broncos were supposed to have taken a pretty sizable step forward offensively. You thought with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm that there would at least be a level of consistency. Maybe you didn't get the upside of a franchise quarterback that you were maybe looking for, but that's okay. I think organizationally you needed to take this step forward, and I think in a lot of ways they have. You're playing meaningful games in December for a reason here. So the people out there that are saying, well, this team is terrible and that they haven't improved, I think we very much can say they have, but it's not quite enough there. So if you're the wide receiver group, how are you viewing your role currently on this team and what you're hoping for now and into the future?
I think publicly you're saying we're doing whatever it takes to win. We play our role. We go out there and block when we need to. We make possession catches when we need to. We do what we need to. I think privately you've gotten the reassurance that there's a quarterback that can get you the ball next year before you sign those big money deals. And I think that that's really where that's headed. I think that they're out there doing what they're supposed to be doing right now under the auspices of knowing that next year is probably going to be a commitment back to the receivers with probably a different quarterback and, very likely a different offensive coordinator.
It's funny, though, right? Because we've been pounding the table to run the ball. We've been saying, Pat Shurmur, you just got to run the ball. And they're starting to do that way more. And yet now the whole narrative, everything has shifted now to what's going on with the passing game and how they were earlier in the season probably a little bit too committed to the passing game, and now it's dialed back. But you're also saying, well, there's just so much talent at receiver. I think these conversations really come up, in my opinion, when you're losing games. If you're winning, it's like, well, then what a great game plan. But when you're losing, then it kind of comes back to, okay, well, what could you have done more? And a lot of the stats, especially the passing stats, were all garbage time stats. They really don't really tell the story of what the passing offense was against the Chiefs.
Right, and I think that's another part of it. I think anytime you lose, you're looking for reasons why. When you look for wins, you justify why they didn't do certain things.
Right.
And so who cares about balance when you win? You know, it's one of those things that you start looking at when you're losing, or who cares about, well, they won, so the rest of it doesn't matter. And that's a sports talk radio trope, really, is that hot take radio guy finds the thing to pick on and picks on it. And so, I think that's really what it is. The Broncos are better when they run the football effectively, but the passing game, specifically at the quarterback position, has not been where it needs to be, and that's going to have to improve if the Broncos are going to make the playoffs.
One of the things that is going to have to be fixed almost immediately, and this is something that it is kind of been significant over the last few weeks, but really, really stood out in the Kansas City Chiefs game, is the deep pass. It's something that, you had some success early on in the season, and then there have been a couple of moments here and there, but it hasn't been good enough. Like, I'd say overall, it has not been something that you're hanging your hat on saying, oh, we're really good at this deep passing game thing. That's something that you would expect to improve by next year, especially with guys like Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick, who are 50-50 specialists. Mm-hmm. And then Jerry Jeudy, who, again, one of the best route runners in the game. You'll have KJ Hamler back, all of those kinds of things. But the point being here is you have to work in the now. And so for the now, how are you approaching deep passing? Because you do have to kind of do it, but what it looked like against the Chiefs was a disaster.
Mm-hmm. It did. And part of that, I think, is Teddy's banged up. He's hurt. Part of that is he's just not great at the deep ball, never has been. There have been some outlier numbers because he's so not good at the deep ball that teams just don't respect it, and then occasionally he gets those wide open ones that pad the stat total. So, but the Kansas City game really kind of exposed that. Kansas City was not scared of that deep ball at all.
At all.
Not even a little. And they defended in a way that showed that. And so if you're Teddy Bridgewater, you're going to have to find a way to give your receivers a chance to make a play at least. You can't do this, well, we're just going to be hyper safe and throw it out of bounds. You're going to have to put up balls that they have a chance to make a play on. Teddy Bridgewater gets intercepted on in-breaking routes. That's what he gets intercepted because he's lack of velocity. That's what happens. So you need to find out-breaking routes. Do some back shoulder fade stuff. Find the timing on that kind of stuff. Do some back shoulder fades, some comebacks, some curls to the sideline, those kinds of things where you give your receiver a chance to make a play on a ball. And if you can do that, maybe that'll get some confidence in him and get those defenses to back off a little bit, which will open things up for everybody else.
See, that's what he was good at in training camp. We saw the anticipation throws. We saw him working those kinds of back shoulder plays. They've gotten way away from that. Mm. In fact, when we were breaking down the Eagles game before it happened, we said this is exactly how you attack the Eagles. Back shoulder throws, timing routes. The Eagles will not have much of an answer for it, and they just didn't do any of it.
Yeah, the Eagles are a press bail defense, and it would have been great. Double move and back shoulder stuff would have been great. They didn't do any of it. So part of that may have been that Mike Shula was in charge and not Pat Shurmur. I don't know, but just the entire game plan there was kind of off. And if you look, some of the games this season, the game plan has seemed incredible, and some of them have just seemed puzzling. I thought the game planning against Kansas City was okay. I think the execution was poor.
I think that's a fair way to assess it. All right, next time on Broncos Country Tonight, we will break down the Detroit Lions. That's right. One win doesn't necessarily matter. Yeah, hey, no team at this point can be overlooked, especially for the Broncos, who have played up and down depending on the different levels of competition. So we'll get to that next time. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.